Hi everybody and welcome to the Disruptive Diner. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. Today's topic is cloudsourcing creative projects. Actually, I don't remember the whole title. What did we give it? Creative projects in the 21st century. If you're just catching up with us, if you remember, you were already sent the discussion guide with some great links to some cool topics. These slides will also be posted afterwards. So what we're talking about is how the internet and collaboration has been changing, and in some ways it's kind of timeless, and in some ways it's going to some new things. And we're going to have three great presenters, and they're going to talk about how this works and why this matters to you. We're going to start off with Bev Hacker. Bev is the executive director of KDHX, independent radio station here in St. Louis, one of the largest independent radio stations anywhere in the US, and very successful at getting lots of people involved in creating content and having a voice. She's going to talk about how they took a foray into the world of film and why they did that, why collaboration made a difference there, and ultimately why it didn't fit their organization and why they moved on. This is going to kind of let us start off with the why collaborate. Why does this work? And why does it matter? The format that we follow is the Pachachkacha format, which is each presenter gets 20 slides, 20 seconds for each slide. That means that number one, we have lots of time for really great discussion. Number two, it means that they're all a little bit flustered because nobody's used to doing that. So we ask that everybody cut them some slack. What we want to get to is hear a big idea and get to a discussion. And we're going to get back and we're going to hear after this, what are some of the social norms that are emerging from this, and then what are some of the sensory possibilities from these kinds of collaborations. So Bev, are you ready?
I am ready.
She is ready. I am about to start her. You are ready to go.
All right. As Dan said, I am with KDHX Community Media. We are an independent, non-commercial radio station in St. Louis, Missouri. We're also on the web at kdhx.org. We've been around for about 26 years, and we were the original crowdsourcers. All of our programmers that you hear on the air are all volunteers. Everyone that contributes content to our website, all volunteers. And so when it comes to collaborating, we're pretty good at it. We've done it for quite a while. At the time, I'm going to go back a little bit to 2004. At that point in time, we not only had the radio station, but we also had a television station. We were the managers of the public access television station in St. Louis. We hired a gentleman to be our development director who was a documentary filmmaker, and he clued us into the 48-hour film project. 48-hour film project had been around for a bit. It was based in Washington, D.C., and the concept behind it was that teams of filmmakers would sign up to do films, and then on a Friday night they would get a character, a prop, and a line, and a genre, and then they had 48 hours to make a film. So on Sunday night, they would turn in a 6 to 8 minute narrative film. We decided to become the St. Louis presenter of the 48-hour film project, and what that meant for us was that we would advertise for filmmakers or filmmaking teams. They would sign up, and then we would facilitate the making of those films. The first year, it was about 48 filmmaking teams, and after that, we pretty much maxed out at 72 teams a year. When we started doing this, the filmmaking community in St. Louis had really gotten pretty small. The St. Louis Film Commission had closed its doors. The Missouri Film Office was about to close its doors. And there was not a lot of filmmaking going on in St. Louis. We were able to, through the 48-hour film project, we were able to really enliven the filmmaking community here in St. Louis. So what started as 48 teams, what we found is year after year, teams would break up and constitute new teams, and there would be more and more and more people involved every year. We did that up until last year. We did the project, but what also came out of that was the way that we were doing it, the interface that we did on the internet for the project. The 48-hour film project people came to us and said, you know, you guys seem to do this really, really well. And we have this other operation called the National Film Challenge. It's basically for cities that don't have a 48-hour film project in their city. And it's done on a national and international basis. It's done completely over the internet, and we'd like you to take this over. So we took over the National Film Challenge, I believe in 2008, and we had films up to 200 filmmaking teams from all over the world making narrative films for that competition. We then decided, well, narrative films are great. However, our great love was in documentary. We were running a public access television station. A lot of our staff were documentary filmmakers, and we really liked documentary a lot. So we started the International Documentary Project, or I'm sorry, the International Documentary Challenge. Same deal. In this case, you had 5 days to make a documentary. And again, we ended up having anywhere from 100 to 200 teams from all over the world. There were topics anywhere from, kind of humorous topics. We had one about a hip-hopping grandma in China. We had one that was just an amazingly touching film about a woman who takes photographs of children who have terminal illnesses. Just really, really touching. And what we found was that the documentaries were of a really stellar quality, because we had situations where people were professional filmmakers, either working in industry or working as documentary filmmakers, but a documentary takes so very long to do that a lot of them just never got their ideas off the ground. And this gave them the opportunity to take an idea that they already had and translate it into a short film in about a week. And so we were getting these just amazing films coming to us year after year after year. We ended up translating that into a number of things. First of all, because we also did education, we were able to translate our success in these film competitions into doing filmmaker workshops, where we would have well-known filmmakers come into town and talk about their process. So sometimes it was their process of getting funded, sometimes it was their process of actually making a documentary or making a narrative film. And sometimes it was things like how to get financing. So we had a number of these, and then we also started doing master classes. So we did master classes in collaboration with other organizations here in town and nationally. So we did master classes in things like screenwriting and cinematography and audio for filmmaking, and just kind of the nuts and bolts of how you make a great film. Beyond that, we found that we were getting a lot of distribution interest in the films. Because of the quality of the documentary films, we were able to partner with POV, which is a national organization. It stands for Point of View. You can see them on PBS, and they also have a website. We've been partnering with Hot Docs in Canada. Canadians love their documentaries, and the documentary in Canada is huge. And so Hot Docs is, I believe, the second largest documentary film competition or film festival in the world. So we've been a partner with them for a very, very long time. We also found that there were distributors that were interested in our films, and we've had a number of films that have been recognized nationally and internationally. One called Ars Magna, which won the POV award in the year that it was entered. It was about a guy that does anagrams. It was nominated for an Oscar in 2009. Excellent, wonderful film, and it tells this great story in about 6.5 minutes. About what it means to be an artist who delves into into the art of anagramming. We also had another film called Ghost Bike that was done about the white bikes that you see where a fatal bike accident has happened. Really touching film, and that one happened to end up somehow on the front page of AOL for about 3 weeks. And because of the distribution agreement that we had, we ended up getting $10,000 from the hits on that one particular film, which we were then able to share with the filmmaker. So we had this kind of great deal going. We had distribution, we had money, we had collaboration, we had education, and for all intents and purposes, it looked like a really great business model. But it ended up not being a great business model for us. In 2011, we lost the television station. because of some funding issues, so public access television no longer happens in St. Louis. We then took all of our video expertise, our training, and our equipment, and we turned it into music video making, which now is part of our overall web presence. And we decided that that where we were with the filmmaking projects is that we either had to put a lot of resources behind them and grow them significantly, or we needed to let them go. And we felt like between what we had going on with the radio station, we were also in the process of building a new venue and a new building, and we just had so much going on that the media arts side of things, the filmmaking side of things, started looking a lot like mission creep to us. But we felt really strongly about that community that we had built and about the importance of these films. So we looked for the best places to place them. We ended up taking the National Film Challenge and we gave that back to 48 Hours, so now they're running that. We took the 48 Hours St. Louis partnership and we gave that to Cinema St. Louis. They're the folks that do the St. Louis International Film Festival. We took the Documentary Challenge and we gave that to an organization called the Audience Awards, who does crowdfunding filmmaking competitions, and now they've added the Documentary Challenge to their work. So we're back to doing what we do best, which is music and education. We've expanded. We now own the folk school, so we also do group instrument lessons on traditional folk music. We do concerts. We do educational outreach in things far beyond just filmmaking. We still do some things in filmmaking, but we, for instance, are doing one this weekend about making and distributing music videos. We did one on setting up your guitar. So our mission is building community through media, and we feel like we do that really well with what we have, and feel like when we placed all of the filmmaking projects into other places, that the folks that have taken them over are going to do a great job with them, and we know that they're going to have a life beyond us. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev. So we have time for a few questions. We have a few people here in St. Louis, some people online.
Okay.
Already a couple of questions have come up. Somebody wanted to know if you have revenue. So you talked about this one that got placement.
We
How
did.
does that revenue model work? You know, you're crowdsourcing. It's people doing this really as a labor of love.
They're actually, that was one of the big decisions in deciding whether to let it go or not, because there is revenue attached to it. The filmmaking groups pay anywhere from $90 to $125 to participate. So there's a nice chunk of revenue there. And then for 48, we also have screenings, local screenings. So there's revenue attached to that. And then we also have we had a distribution deal with Snag Films and also with Typecast. So one of the slides, I kind of went past it, but one of the slides showed a DVD of our 2009 films that are selling still on Amazon. So there was some nice revenue attached to it, but we realized that that revenue was going to go down significantly in relation to the amount of time it took to market. So we ended up feeling like the revenue wasn't making up for the amount of time we had with the limited resources we have.
Okay. Does anybody here have a question? We have another question that came in. What kind of funding was originally needed to take this? Was this a revenue positive thing? I mean, was it? And what kind of resources were required to kind of start you down this path?
It was, I would say it's revenue positive from the standpoint that we rolled it into what we were already doing. So we already were doing education through the TV station. We were already doing a website through the radio station. We already had people that were very familiar with narrative and documentary filmmaking, and we had a really good connection to the community here locally. So I would say it was at worst revenue neutral, and in many cases revenue positive.
Okay. Another question is, how did you think that people, if this is distributed, so people in cities all over, obviously here where you guys were, there's a strong sense of identity of it and how it works together as a program. Did people feel like there was an emerging sense of community between all of the cities that were working together? Or talk a little bit about how unifying it was across all of those nodes, if you will.
I think that's an area that we realized we couldn't do. We had great ideas for it, but we just didn't have the resources. So we found that a lot of the community that happened here happened around the local screenings. And for whatever reason, there's a whole lot of filmmakers in Alaska that want to do this. So we knew that in Alaska and Portland and in a couple other places that there were enough filmmakers in those areas to actually do local screenings, but we never had the resources to get the partnerships in those cities to make it happen. We actually, apparently Micronesia is all about documentaries too, because the Micronesian, and I don't even know where Micronesia is, but the Micronesian TV station picked it up and made commercials about it and all kinds of stuff. They had this big community around 2 or 3 filmmaking groups that were making these documentary films in Micronesia. So it was happening, but we really didn't feel like we had the resources to help make it happen faster.
So you could provide the impetus to make a film,
Right.
And because there was an outlet for it, but there wasn't always the outlet to actually create a little ecosystem. Because if you didn't have a partner on the ground,
Right.
if you didn't have enough critical mass, that you had a problem. So it's a critical mass problem.
It was a critical mass problem. Now we ended up, because we partnered with Hot Docs, and then in the early years we partnered with Silver Docs, which no longer exists, but it was a documentary festival in Silver Springs, Maryland. We had an amazing amount of our teams ended up going to those film festivals. We actually one year did a film festival in Kosovo, and it was the only film festival in a country that doesn't have a single motion picture house in it. It was very weird. The United States Army provided the generators, and they showed the films out just like in the open somewhere. So there's a huge community for documentary films, and they will go to places, but without the infrastructure of having what we have here in St. Louis, which is the partnership with the Tivoli and the partnership with local filmmakers and the partnership with Cinema St. Louis, we just didn't have the critical mass to pull it off.
Right. So you probably would have had to have local partner. I mean, you would have had to have somebody that would have gotten those places to even
Right.
know how to find those partnerships.
Right. Which is actually, that's the whole model that 48 Hour Film Project is based on, is they provide the infrastructure, but the local organizations in each city basically do the sign-ups, the public screenings, the kickoff, the drop-off. That's all done by a local group.
So what were some of do you think that people long-term, I mean, was it a fleeting kind of thing that people did that, no, that was kind of fun and they've moved on to other things? Does anybody know anything about whether people have kept
Right.
working together? Are there ideas that have emerged from this that have taken off?
There actually there's at least one, and I think 2 of our 48 Hour filmmaker groups that went on to do full-length films. George Hickenlooper actually saw one of the films in our competition and produced a film for that filmmaking group. We also know that a lot of the folks that were producing for the Doc Challenge were doing them as trailers for longer films that they intended to make. And I believe a lot of those films have now been made.
Cool. And John, go ahead.
I was just wondering, you keep talking about competitions. How were these films judged?
2 ways. So there's we had professional judges, so we would recruit judges that had knowledge of either narrative films or documentary films, and we'd have a team of judges that would review the films, and then we had audience voting. So for the 48 Hour Film Project, the audience voting happened at the end of the public screenings. The judging actually happened at the end of the public screenings, and then we would present a best of the following week. And then the ones that were done online, that audience judging was all done online, so it was all crowdsourced judging.
Okay, well, that was going to be my follow-up question about what sort of crowdsourced judging you had.
That was part of what we did, is we built the audience judging interface. So that was part of the reason that we ended up getting the National Film Challenge, because 48 Hour did not have that ability at the time to create the crowdsourcing judging interface.
So one last question that's come in. So that tees up infrastructure, so the judging and the way to submit and the way to distribute all of this
Right.
stuff. So that's one thing, an asset that you had, that you created.
We did, and that really evolved over time, because in 2004, most of them came in on mini DV, and then they started coming in on DVD, and then they were clamoring to bring them in just digitally, just file transfer. So we had to keep up with the technology and be able to deal with how people wanted to turn in the films, because part of the competition is that you have to have the film in to us by a certain time, and if it wasn't, then it wasn't qualified for competition. Because we didn't want a situation where somebody uploaded a film and then went back and finished it and re-uploaded it because now it's a better film and it wasn't done in 48 hours. Right. So, you know, keeping up with the technology, keeping up with what filmmakers were doing in the community, the whole interface situation between the judging and the audience participation and the submission was pretty big.
So in the nature, so you had the infrastructure that evolved,
right,
and then you had the sense of we're going to do this in 48 hours, and everybody gets the same marching orders and everything.
Correct.
And then so you have kind of a shared sense of purpose, and I can commit to doing this over a short period of time.
And that's key.
Right.
We heard that from a lot of people.
And then there's a great book on that called Cognitive Surplus, actually, that talks about why people will do that. And then the last thing you offered was a competition. So you had
right.
kind of three things that were the assets that let people do it. Do you think they were equally important to people to participate, or could you weight them, or what?
Yeah,
what mattered?
You know, it's interesting because what we found was that the prize money was not the major impetus for most people doing it. We early on made deals with a variety of film festivals, and the fact that their films could show in a major film festival was really the thing that was the big driving force for most of the filmmakers.
So social currency rather than
definitely.
financial
Well,
currency.
not just social currency, but you know, the buyers of films, that's where they buy their films. So
oh, right.
if your film gets shown at Hot Docs, even if it turns out that that's just a trailer, that's where you're going to get funding, that's where you're going to get a buyer. So to have Hot Docs and Silver Docs and what's the other one? Oh, NAB, I'm sorry.
Oh, right.
So having those films in those places, Big Sky, there's a number of places that they showed, and that was the big deal.
Great.
We never got into South by Southwest, but that would be the other one to go to. Yeah.
So thanks once again, Beverly. So to wrap up, we're going to come back, and Kyle Richter is going to be here, and Kyle is going to talk about collaboration that comes from maybe someplace that we sometimes unfairly stereotype as not likely to collaborate. But I think it's important to just remember that this kind of collaboration happens because we provide the means, we provide the method, we provide a motivation for how people get together. And so thanks for walking us through that from a business perspective. Thanks again. We'll be back in just a few minutes.